Alright everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today, same day as the reveal video of the new truck. So like I said in the previous video, we're going to be doing some reliability mods today on the new 6-liter. So I have the hood open in there, ready to go. Everything's cleaned up nicely. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be installing a coolant filter. And the reason that we're installing a coolant filter is obviously some of you know, but some of you might not. The oil coolers in this truck, they are liquid to liquid, so coolant runs through the oil cooler to cool down the oil so you don't have really high temps. And when Ford made the oil cooler for these, they blew casting sand down the passageways for the coolant, and they didn't do a very good job of cleaning it out. So that's what causes a lot of these oil coolers to clog underneath the turbo here in the valley of the motor. That's where the oil cooler sits. And so they tend to clog up with that casting sand, right? And that causes your engine oil temp to be a lot higher than your coolant temp, because your coolant's still getting cooled down by the radiator, but your oil is not getting cooled down by the oil cooler because it is clogged up. So the coolant gets stuck and doesn't cool down the oil like it should. And thankfully, I have not yet had an issue with the oil cooler because I've only had the truck for a few months. But doing a little preventative maintenance goes a long ways. I do know that the oil filter, well, the oil cooler has been backflushed a few times by the previous owner, and so that does help get a lot of that out, but there still could be some in there, and might as well save it while you can so you don't have to drop a couple $1,000s on an oil cooler. Because the best thing you want to do is get a oil cooler relocation kit, either a OEM oil cooler relocation that still uses liquid to liquid, or you go to a bulletproof diesel air to oil cooler, which gets relocated right in front of the radiator so it gets the same airflow that the radiator does. And you get rid of the factory oil cooler that has all of the casting sand and everything in it. So that's the best way to do it. But today we're going to be installing a coolant filtration system from XTREME Diesel Performance. This is all that the kit comes with, and it's super easy to install. So first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get our coolant filter block set up. That's the housing that the filter spins onto. And so basically how it works is just like any other filter, I guess. The coolant comes into this passageway here, goes down into the filter, gets filtered out, and it comes back out through here, and it gets pushed back into the degas bottle. So it gets pushed back into like your heater core area. That's the hose that you're going to tap into. So it does come with a piece here to tap into the radiator, well, the heater core hose. But there's a lot simpler way to do it because it does come with a T here. And instead of using this piece, get onto here to put into another hose. I'll show you when it's on the truck. They make it a lot more complicated than it needs to be when you can just tee into the actual hose there on its own. So I'll show you how all this gets set up. And it's literally going to be about, I don't know, probably a 15-minute install once we drain a little bit of the coolant. So we're going to have to drain probably, I'd say, a quarter of the cooling system on this truck, just a little petcock underneath the radiator, so that all of the coolant most of the coolant gets out of there, so when you pop it open, the hoses and stuff like that, you're not having a huge leak and mess on the ground. So I'm going to set the camera up, and we're going to get started on putting this guy together here, and then we'll be on our way. So what we got to do first is we're going to take our bucket, and we're going to get underneath on the radiator, and we're going to filter out, we're going to drain, I'd say probably about a quarter of our coolant out of the system, so that when we open up the radiator hoses that nothing comes out, or not a whole lot at least. And to do that, I'm just going to come underneath the truck on the driver's side, and underneath the radiator there's going to be a little petcock right here next to this hose, this guy right here. And I'm just going to open that up and drain out most of the radiator, and then a lot of it's going to backflush in, so you're going to be just fine. Let's do that now. Alright, now we got the coolant draining, so we're going to let that drain for a little bit. It's going to take a little while since, obviously, little hole, a lot of coolant. So we're gonna move on to setting up our coolant filtration system. So this is the bracket that it's gonna go on. It's gonna bolt on like that, and they have the two provided nuts with the lock washers on it. So we're gonna go ahead and screw those in and just put them down hand tight for the time being. So I got this on here, and this is gonna be a 9/16 wrench, and just tighten it down hand tight snug so that the lock washers go flat so that it doesn't come out. I'll show you exactly where this is gonna sit in the engine bay. It's actually a really clean setup. So right there on that little stud, you're gonna take that stud off, or that nut I would say, and then you're gonna put this guy on here, and this little angled piece is gonna sit right into this slot, and then you're gonna throw it through that, and it's gonna sit right here. And the hoses can be tucked behind the intercooler piping in between the AC compressor, and the heater core hose that you're gonna want to tap into is right behind this intercooler pipe. I don't know if you can see it, but I'll show you when we get there. So it's gonna sit like that, and it's gonna look really nice. Especially we're gonna go for a black look in this engine bay, just to make it nice and clean. So the next thing you're gonna want to do when you're installing this is, the XTREME diesel only comes with 2 ports, and some other ones come with a plug on the other side. I'm not 100% sure what the plug is for, but this one only has 2, so that's all you have to worry about. But the next thing you're gonna do is install your ball valves on each one of these ports, using the supplied thread locker, and get it all the way around to where it's tight, and then twist it all the way up until the ball valve is on top, and that'll be tight enough to be able to hold all the pressure in the system. So do that for both of them, and then we'll be on our way. So one of the next things that you're going to want to do here is, once you have your both your ball valves in there, I just like to keep them shut, just in case, you know, anything happens to, when you plug everything in, something might come out here when the filter's not on yet, because we don't want to put the filter on until we're pretty much at the last step. So you're going to take this line, all right, your T line, and this guy is going to be in place of, I'll show you. It's going to be in place of this line here, coming from your degas bottle to your radiator. All right, so you're going to take this off, and you're going to reuse these clamps that are on here for putting on the new one, basically. So I like to install all of my hoses first on here, just so I can set it in there, and then I don't have to mess with anything when it's on the truck. It's a lot easier when it's already outside of the truck, so you don't have to worry about anything else. So we're going to install this line right here, going into this ball valve, and then this is going to go across the top of the fan shroud, and it's going to plug into where we take off the degas line. So I'll get to that. Make sure you thread tape all your studs, because you don't want any leaks in your cooling system, and then your truck will overheat, and then it's a bad day for everybody. So throw on thread tape on each one of these threads, tighten it down, and then once it feels tight, use your wrench, go another quarter turn, make sure it's good to go. So with the XTREME diesel kit, I mean, this is the same for every kit, obviously, they're all the same thing. This end of the line with the small fitting is going to go on the top portion of the ball valve. And then this little T-post has a little threaded insert there, and that's what the little one is going to go into, and that's going to test your heater core line. So once I get this one installed and this inside of the ball valve on the coolant filter block, then I will be installing the coolant filter block inside of the truck, and I'll take a video of that and make sure you know what's going on. So like I said, here's the coolant filter block installed. You don't want to have the filter installed just yet, because you are going to have to get down to that bolt to be able to hook it into that little mounting spot right there. And I do have the updated battery cables, but for those of you who don't have the updated battery cables, there will be a little like plastic piece hanging down. It looks like it's an X through it. The stud goes through that. You can put that back through the stud. It's just going to make it kind of a pain. If you ever have to unhook your battery cables, you're going to have to undo that stud. But it does make it sit nice and flush and look good. So here is this heater core hose that I was talking about. So that guy we're going to have to tap into underneath the intercooler pipe, which I might take off the top piece and pull it up a little bit so that I have enough room to work. But this guy is going to tee into that. So I'll run it through here and then underneath, and then it'll look nice and clean. And then this guy over here, probably gonna have to do some trimming because it's a little long, but this sits in here with the factory hose clamp, and then this one sits up here into the degas bottle, just like that. So let me knock out those, and then we'll move on to the heater core hose. And just like that, we got our coolant filled up. It's still bubbling out, so I'm gonna let that do that for a little bit, and then we're gonna burp the system. I'm gonna leave the degas bottle off. I'm gonna start the truck, let it get up some pressure so that all the air comes out of the system, and then once we open up the ball valves, we'll have some more air escaping from the system. But we're gonna hop in and we're gonna start the truck here, and then we're gonna let everything cycle through, and we should be good to go. All right, so now that that is done, we're gonna go ahead and start the truck. First time hearing it run for you guys. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to want to let the engine warm up a little bit where the thermostat's going to open, which is roughly around 190 degrees or so. And then before that, I'm going to open the ball valve once the system has a little pressure in it. Alright everybody, well that's going to be a wrap to today's video. So at the end, when you're done, just make sure you bleed your cooling system. It's a closed system, so you don't really, it'll bleed itself pretty much. But since you're taking out coolant and putting coolant back in, just make sure you get a lot of the air out of the system, or else you're gonna have coolant spikes. So, super easy install. Thanks everybody for watching and checking out the video. I appreciate your time, and I hope you're enjoying the new build. It's gonna be a fun one. It's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be mainly reliability and showing you how to do things. You know, what additives to use, what you should use nowadays, and you know, just everything on the diesel world, how it's gonna be now. Until I get down to Florida and we get a project car going. But thanks for sticking around everybody, I appreciate you, and until the next video, I'll see you in the next one.